The hour of convening having arrived, all members of this House will please report to the floor and take your seats. All members will please report to the floor and come to order. The clerk will ring the bell. All members will please take your seats. We're about to have the morning roll call. We are about to have the morning roll call. All members present will please vote green to signify their presence in the chamber, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines. Doorkeepers will please close the doors and keep them closed. Well, good morning. What a great, exciting day. I have looked forward to this day for months. Nothing like the opening day of baseball season, right? Oh, and it is day 40. We will begin our day as we do each day with scripture reading and prayer by the chaplain, after which we will pledge allegiance to the flag of our country. I have the distinct honor this morning of introducing the chaplain of the day to you, and I can tell you that you're in for a real treat. When I first met Dr. Glenn Cummings of the LJ First Baptist Church, I found the first thing I found about him is that his love for Christ and his love for his fellow man is just infectious, and I feel like that even though we haven't known each other that long, that I have a good friend. So I want to thank him for being here, and his wife Caprice is with him. If you would please stand, let us honor you. Dr. Cummings is a real Georgian, born in Rome, moved with his family to Thomasville, grew up there when he was 3 years old. He's a graduate of Thomasville High School, Union University, and has a Master's of Divinity degree from New Orleans Seminary and a Doctor of Ministry degree from Luther Rice Seminary. He has served as pastor of the Lydia Baptist Church in Lydia, Louisiana, and the Doug Gap Baptist Church in Dalton before he started a 20-year ministry in Maryville, Tennessee. Anybody that calls that Maryville has never been to Tennessee. So he was there for 20 years and then came to LJ in 2015 and has been there since, and has become a very important and beloved member of our community. He's a prolific writer and a great worker on the mission field, and I think you're going to enjoy him today and it is my honor to present to you at this time Dr. Glenn Cummings of LJ.
Mr. Speaker and esteemed members of the House of Representatives and guests, it is certainly an honor to be here this morning. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for inviting me to be here. I'm especially grateful for this opportunity being day 40. I sort of sense the excitement. It's like the last day of school for students before summer break, but most of the students aren't going home to run a campaign like some of you are. I am directing my comments today based on the number 40 and also it being Thursday of Holy Week, the week before Jesus died and rose again on that first Easter Sunday. The number 40 is used frequently in the Bible. Perhaps you may remember that it rained 40 days and 40 nights that caused the flood. Maybe you remember that Jesus was in the wilderness for 40 days, and maybe you have felt like you've been in a rainstorm or you've been in the wilderness these past days. But the number 40 was very important in Moses' life. He lived in Pharaoh's palace for 40 years, thinking he was somebody. He then lived in the desert for 40 years, realizing he was a nobody. But he spent the last 40 years of his life finding out what God can do with somebody when they realize without him they are a nobody. He spent 40 days on Mount Sinai receiving the law from God. Now, I don't know if that's where the 40 days of legislative session came from, but you are entrusted to enact legislative action and laws that make our state run better. And hopefully you realize, like Moses did, that with divine help from God, it goes a lot more easily. The Bible says in Psalm 46, verse 1, God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. In Psalm 124, verse 8, the Bible says, our help is in the name of the Lord who made heaven and earth. This being Holy Week, on the Thursday before Jesus died and rose again, there was a very unusual event that took place on that Thursday. The Bible tells us that Jesus washed the feet of his disciples in John chapter 13. And Jesus is really our best example of serving other people. As a pastor, I have been called to serve the people of LJ, the county of Gilmer, and you have been called to serve the residents in your district and the citizens of this great state of Georgia. As I think about what Jesus did on that last day some 2,000 years ago now, you need to understand the custom of that day. In that day, when you came to a home, you would have been met by a servant with a basin of water, and he would take a nice soft towel because they wore sandals and the roads were dusty. He would have taken the sandals off of your feet and would have washed your feet with the water that was in that basin. He would then dry your feet with that towel. This is also done today in Middle Eastern custom in many places. That's the background for the passage. Jesus was getting ready to have the Lord's Supper with his disciples, and at this particular feast, there was no one there to wash their feet. And so the Lord Jesus himself took a towel, he got down, he began to wash the feet of the disciples. What a remarkable thing to think about who it was that was bent down washing the feet of those disciples. I mean, this is the one who had lived a perfect life, who was getting ready the next day to die on the cross. This is the one who came from heaven in the form of a little baby in a manger in Bethlehem. This is the one who had caused the blind to see, who had allowed the deaf to hear again, the dumb to speak. He was able to order fish to come directly under a boat so much that it broke the nets of those fishermen's nets. He raised a widow's son. He healed a man with dropsy. He healed 10 lepers on one occasion. He turned the water to wine. He healed an impotent man. He raised Lazarus from the dead. A centurion's servant was healed. He calmed the storm on the sea. He healed one with a lunatic child with palsy, a woman with blood disease. He walked on the water. He fed 5,000 and more people with the little boy's lunch. Think about that. Here is the one who was on the floor in front of those disciples, taking a towel and water and washing their feet. It should give you strength today to know that that is the same God who is here to help you as you serve the great state of Georgia. The Word of God says, "Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not unto thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge Him, and He shall direct thy paths." Now let's just imagine, as I close, if Jesus were to walk in the doors back there this morning in physically bodily form. He were to come down one of these aisles, and He came to you and fixed His compassionate eyes upon you. And suppose Jesus knelt in front of you. Now, in our culture, the basin of water and the towel would not be applicable to where we are today, but just say that Jesus came down the aisle and He knelt in front of you and said, "May I serve you today?" Your first thought would probably be like mine: no, you are the Lord of glory. I'm not worthy that you would serve me, but I will happily and readily serve you, is what we would say to Jesus. But let's leave imagination, let's come to reality. Friend, Jesus is here today. He's here in that man, in that woman. He's here in that one up in the balcony. He's here in those residents that you serve in your district of Georgia. He's there in Ellijay where I serve. Remember, Jesus said, "For as much as you've done it to the least of these my brethren, you have done it unto me." So let's remember, as we serve in this great state of Georgia, that as we help those residents of this state, that we are also doing that to serve God and to minister for Him. May we stand and close with prayer. Father, we thank You for the example of servanthood that we find in the life and ministry of our Lord Jesus Christ. God, help us to look to You for the daily strength that we need in our lives. May our lives be a visible expression of Your love to those that You have called us to serve. I pray for these legislators today, and I pray that You will help guide their thoughts and decisions today and in the future. We pray that You'll continue to bless this great state and our great nation. We humbly pray this in the wonderful, precious name of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. May we join now as we pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Let's get a picture or two. Doorkeepers will unlock the doors. Chair recognizes Chairman Darlene Taylor, the chair of the Committee on Information and Audits.
Mr. Speaker, your Committee on Information and Audits has reviewed the proceedings of the previous legislative day and found them to be correct.
Chairman Taylor, the chair of the Committee on Information and Audits, reports that the journal of the previous legislative day has been read and found to be correct. Is there any objection to the confirmation of the journal? The chair hears none and the journal is confirmed. The clerk will read the resolution establishing the order of business for the day.
Mr. Burns, 159th, moves the following be established as the order of business during the first part of the period. Unanimous consents. Introduction of bills and resolutions. First reading and reference of House bills and resolutions. Second reading of bills and resolutions. Morning orders.
Is there any objection to the adoption of the resolution establishing the order of business for the day? The chair hears none and the resolution is adopted. First reading of bills and resolutions. The clerk will read.
House Bill 1077 by Representative Watson, the 172nd. A bill be titled Act to amend Chapter 8 of Title 50 of the Official Code of Georgia, annotated relating to the Department of Community Affairs.
State Planning and Community Affairs.
House Bill 1078 by Representative Stevens, the 164th. The bill be titled Act to amend Chapter 80, Title 36 of the Official Code of Georgia, annotated relating to general provisions applicable to counties, municipal corporations, and other governmental entities.
Appropriations.
House Resolution 1740 by Representative Ralston, the 7th, Hatchett of the 150th, Goomer the 14th, Burns the 159th, Jones the 47th. A resolution naming the forthcoming new state appellate judicial complex, the Nathan Deal Judicial Center.
Rules.
House Resolution 1769 by Representative Thomas the 39th, Anulowitz the 42nd, Silcox the 52nd, Rakestraw the 19th, and Stevens the 164th. A resolution creating the House Study Committee on Georgia Women's Legacies.
Human Relations and Aging.
That completes first readers.
Second reading of bills and resolutions. The clerk will read.
House Bill 1076 by Representative Paris of the 142nd, a bill to authorize the governing authority of Macon-Bibb County to levy an excise tax. House Resolution 1697 by Representative Park of the 101st, resolution encouraging the celebration of the month of June 2018 as LGBTQ Pride Month across the United States and as the celebration of Atlanta Pride during the months of September and October 2018. Through second readers.
There are no committee reports for today. There being no local calendar today, we are now going on to morning orders. Morning orders. This House will come to order. Got a lot of conversations going on, a lot of people milling about. Everybody should have a seat to sit in if they're in the chamber. And if you don't have a chair, let us know and we'll get you one. Please take your important conversations to the anteroom. Otherwise, take your seats and come to order and give attention to the members in the well. The chair recognizes for a morning order Chairman Bill Hitchens.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I have a couple gentlemen here with me, and I think this is a pretty motley looking crew, and the only thing we really have in common is that we're old.
No, I'm good. Man. I'm good looking.
But today's a special day for all of us. The one thing, we have a brotherhood that transcends our culture. We got 2 Republicans, 2 Democrats, 1 black, 3 white, and we all come from very different parts of the state. But back in our youth, all 4 of us were in the military service of the United States and served in Vietnam. 2.7 million servicemen served in Vietnam. 58,000 lost their lives. 300,000 were wounded. Almost 3 million civilians were killed in Vietnam. 250,000 ARVNs, which was the Army of the Republic of Vietnam, and almost 500,000 North Vietnamese. It was a significant tragedy. And the one thing I would remember about it all is the media portrays us as having lost the war. We never ever lost one battle in the Vietnam War. We pulled out on this date in 1973, and we were still in control. 2 years later, the North Vietnamese Army moved into Saigon and took it over. Today at 2 o'clock, the governor's going to hold a wreath laying ceremony out on the north steps of the Capitol, and everybody's invited. But it's an emotional thing for many of us, but it's particularly emotional. All of us lost friends over there. I think we try to push it back in the recesses of our mind, but it left an indelible mark on all of us. And I don't think any of us will ever forget what transpired there, and particularly how some of us were treated when we came back. All 4 of us I served in the Marines. These 3 all served in the Army. We were all engaged in conflict, and I just wish that you take a moment of silence for all those who lost their lives there. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Representative Hilton for a morning order, and the chair wants to let all the members know that there will be a 1-minute time limit on the morning orders. Representative Hilton is not present. Chair recognizes Representative Spencer for a morning order. 1 minute.
Good morning, members. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. 4 years ago, when we put in the Hidden Predator Act, when I started this journey, I spent 4 years of my 8 years here at the General Assembly pushing for open courts for justice for victims of child sexual abuse. I would just like to point out the poignant irony that the Senate leadership in this week's failing to stand up for justice and choosing instead to wash its hands of their governing responsibility, just as government leaders did almost 2,000 years ago in the person of Pontius Pilate. Think about that as we move into the Easter weekend. This is the time and the same result that will follow, the death of innocents. And this is the question whether generations of our group, our leaders here, will have to forever carry the blood on its hands for the complicity with special interests who have systematically, strategically covered up decades of child sexual abuse. It's time for the Senate to act and pass HB 605.
Chair recognizes Representative Abel Mabel Thomas.
Just call. Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We rise with my colleagues, Representative Dewey McLean and also Representative Carl Gilliard. Calvin, I want you to come up as well, if you would. It's two very dynamic civil rights leaders that passed away. One of them is Ralph Worrell, and Ralph Worrell joined SCLC as a labor organizer for the Poor People's Campaign. He went on to be personally asked by Dr. Martin Luther King to work for over 50 years with the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, and we went to his homegoing on yesterday. And the other person that we want to bring attention to is Rita Jackson Samuels, who was one of the first black women in executive leadership in the governor's office under Jimmy Carter. And I'd just like to ask for a moment of silence for both of these great leaders of human rights and civil rights in Georgia. Thank you very much.
Chair recognizes Representative Gonzalez and Representative Wallace for a morning order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good morning, my colleagues. I would like you to help me recognize and welcome two guests that we have in the gallery today. The first one, Broderick Flanagan, who is our Artist of the Month for House District 117. And the second one, Bo Shell, the little ice cream dude. He's had a business since he was 8 years old, and he is our Entrepreneur of the Month. Please help me recognize them. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Representative Bennett for a morning order.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Speaker and colleagues this morning. It is my honor to recognize a stalwart pastor, a divine minister from House District 94. This morning is my honor to recognize Reverend Michael Benton, a native of Lithonia, Georgia, along with his wife, First Lady Reverend Dr. Yvonne Benton. Reverend Benton is retiring after 40 years of distinctive service to the DeKalb County community and beyond. While he was called to preach at the age of 26, he has continued to strive and change the lives and positively impact our community as well as this world. Under his divine pastor leadership, the church has grown from hundreds to over thousands right there in Lithonia, Georgia. His campus includes 2 sanctuaries, an administrative and educational center, a family life center, and the first church parking deck in DeKalb County. Pastor Bennett retires and leaves to pastor Fairfield the Reverend Brooks, who is with him today. So colleagues, join me in welcoming from House District 94, the pastor, retired, and the pastor of Fairfield Baptist Church, House District 94. Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker.
Chair recognizes Representative Dubnik and members of the Hall County delegation for a morning order. Just a minute, Representative. Okay. Gentlemen may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, I rise today with an extremely heavy heart. If you know me well, you know that there are 2 things in my life that I love: my hometown of Gainesville and the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. And today I rise to inform you of the untimely passing of a good friend a man who loved Gainesville and Hall County, and boy, did he love the Yellow Jackets. Walt Snelling was the voice of the Gainesville High School Red Elephants for across 4 decades. He rarely missed a day. He rarely missed a call. And the thing that sticks with me and is so important to me about Walt, it didn't matter what team you were on, home team, opposing team. It didn't matter how good your team was, how good of a player you were. Walt always called your name with pride and recognized everyone. If you would, join me in a moment of silence to remember my friend Walt Snelling. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Chairman Beverly for a morning order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In the up in the gallery, you see a group of women with the Atlanta Phoenix women's football team. Would y'all please stand up? They are with the Women's Football Alliance, and they have their first game this Saturday in Kennesaw State. So would the House give them a hand? They are tremendous athletes, and if y'all have a chance, please check them out. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield the will.
Chair recognizes Representative Stovall for a morning order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members of the House. As we end again Women's Month, Women History Month, I want to recognize, she's not able to make it today, but I want to recognize for all the golfers, Mariah Stackhouse, who's a graduate of North Clayton High School, who resides in Riverdale. She began playing golf at the age of 2 and is a graduate of Stanford University. And at the age of 17, became the youngest African-American woman to earn a spot at the U.S. Open Golf Tournament. She was a 4-time NCAA All-American and helped lead Stanford to the 2015 National Championship. She also had a starring role in the movie Breaking Baylor. And she's the 7th African-American to join the LPGA golfing tournament. She's not here today, but I just want to recognize Mariah Stackhouse. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Representative Sharper for a morning order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to address a bipartisan issue. Bad debt is not just a national, state, or local government problem. Debt is a personal problem. People want to escape the bondage of poverty only to fail. It is said that a formal education is the key to escaping poverty. That is not entirely true. It doesn't matter if you have an associate's, bachelor's, master's, or even a doctorate degree. If you cannot manage your finances, then you will always be broke. Kids need to finish school understanding how to apply math to their finances to truly be successful. I can state without reservation that providing a true financial education throughout Georgia K-12 schools, we will see a reduction in our crime rate, our drug dependency rate, and ultimately our poverty rate. So I urge my fellow legislators and members on the Education and Budget Committees to please consider bringing back personal finance requirements to our elementary, middle schools, high schools as soon as possible. Also, let's make sure that every college graduate in the state of Georgia takes a personal finance course before they walk across that stage. To go to school all of those years and still be broke is just a waste of time. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Representative Marin for a morning order. Representative Marin. Chair recognizes Representative Cannon for a morning order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's day 40 and we have done some good. It's day 40 and we have, in some instances, yielded to local control and home rule. Some will say it's been a long 40 days and that we are lucky to go home to our families after these 40 days. But many Georgians remain away from their families due to cash bail. To those who have never taken the time to learn about bond schedules and bail reform, it's okay, because our governor and highly respected judicial members, prosecutors, law enforcement have studied it for over 6 months. And we have all unanimously voted on a measure that addresses the council's changes. Holding Georgians in jail pre-trial targets families who cannot sometimes pay $200. We will be litigated against due to constitutionality. We already have a city that has made bail reform changes and are working towards supporting people and ensuring court appearances. Let's continue readdressing the bail reform issues in Georgia. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Representative Howard for a morning order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just wanted to come up on day 40 and express my feelings about how this year has gone for me, and hopefully it has gone for you as well. This year has been different for myself, and I wanted to make sure that I take time and thank the Capitol Police Force, the State Patrol, the doorkeepers, and all of my colleagues who have assisted and shown a lot of kindness toward my situation. That has allowed me to make a full session and get stronger, and I look forward to next session even being stronger. I cannot express how much it means sitting on that back row and the folk that come by and just say, well, look, can I get you some water? Can I get you a cup of coffee? Just wanting to help and just be of assistance. That means a lot. And I really want to thank you for it. But that same kindness has not only just gone in this chamber, but it's gone throughout the Speaker and his staff and everyone that's involved into this process. So again, on day 40, I want to say I appreciate it. I thank you for your kindness and goodwill that you have bestowed upon myself. And I tell you what, when we get married, we say it's 50-50. I think I know a whole lot more about that 50-50 now, because I have a wife that I couldn't even get to come close to this chamber in the previous years that I've been here. But she came this year and stayed with me every day to make sure that I was taken care of. And let me say this: we were talking this morning and last night, and she said, "You sure this is the last day?" She wanted some more days. And moving around in this chair in the chamber, Mr. Speaker, I'm glad I hadn't ran over any feet. The only feet that I think I kind of touched was my wife's, and she was walking a little bit too close to me in the back, and I backed up and hit her feet. But I don't think I've touched anybody else's feet in here, and I want to say thank you again, and hopefully we'll do the same thing next year. All right, thank you.
Chair recognizes Representative F. Strachan for a morning order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, it's a great day today. we have a great opportunity to acknowledge some outstanding Gwinnetians who are here with us from the Gwinnett Medical Center Concussion Institute. We have two outstanding representatives with us today, including my friend Paige Havens from Rotary Club. The Institute actually sends out a mobile unit to high school football games to notice the signs of concussion, to be of assistance for students in the community. It's an outstanding group that's studying concussion issues and providing treatment throughout the metro area. If you would please join me, rise, and let's recognize these outstanding Gwinnetians. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Representative Lopez for a morning order.
Muy buenos días, damas y caballeros. I have the pleasure today being the last day of my first term in this session and in this house to have the privilege to force my father to come visit me. And so I wanted to recognize him and thank him because the reason that I stand here today is because the efforts he has made to ensure that he taught me as best he could, has guided me as best he could. He made sure or tries still to make sure that I am a fiscally responsible person, but that I always make sure that those that come next to me and behind me are given the same opportunities that I have had. And, así que el día de hoy, papá, te quería reconocer que estás aquí y darte las gracias por ayudarme a estar el día de hoy aquí. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Representative Marin for a morning order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good morning, buenos días. And have a group that APAC, it's Asian Pacific American Council, and they'll be coming in pretty soon to the galleries. They're not here, but I want to recognize anyway. We have representation from the Vietnamese American Community, Cambodian Association of Georgia, Thailand American World Center USA, the Filipino American Association of Georgia, Indonesia, the OCA, Organization of Chinese Americans, Korean American Association of Greater Atlanta, Laotian American Society, and the Indian American Cultural Association. They will be coming into the fourth floor, so sorry when we miss it, but they're going to be coming and see our work. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Chair recognizes Representative Hilton for a morning order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I am proud today to recognize a group from Norcross High School. The Norcross High School Model UN class is here. They're up in the gallery, and I would like you to rise and recognize them. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Representative McGowan for a morning order. This House will be in order. I know everybody's got a lot of business they're trying to take care of, but some of these morning orders are, we just need to pay attention to some of them, okay? Give respect. Chair recognizes Representative McGowan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I've enjoyed being with everybody. I want to thank the speaker from Blue Ridge, a good, strong man, and my minority leader from Luthersville, a good, strong man. I want to thank Agriculture Chair Tom McCall for having me serve with him, but displaying what we call down home good common sense. 50 years ago, I was a young sergeant in Vietnam, and I had 4 months left on my year's tour. Today, I stand with you as a Georgia legislator with 9 months left on my 2-year term. Time moves along. In 1968, our military was made up of mighty good folks from a world of different states, and we had a common mission to serve. Today, in 2018, I see the same thing in the Georgia legislature. We are from many different states, but we're all Georgians now. And one of the projects I took on early on, Mr. Speaker, I want to make sure I don't go over my time here. Have I done it?
No, you're good. You got 3 minutes left.
Thank you, sir. You know, I took on a little project I wanted to see about our Georgia legislature. And I started asking folks where they were born and raised. I'm going to go to the row in front of me right quick. Kentucky, Michigan, Massachusetts, West Virginia, Florida, North Carolina, Oklahoma, Georgia, Cuba, Georgia. Now, does that give you an idea that we are like that military I served in long ago? And there's so much good thinking in here. It's great. Now, I guess politics runs in my blood. My great uncle Daniel Warnell sat over in the Senate many years ago, and he was a mighty fine senator. Matter of fact, that School of Forestry at the University of Georgia is named for him. I'm proud of him. You know, in the 1880s, when this building was built, we didn't have all the communications we have now. And we could really sit down and reason together. And we do that in here today, too, and I'm thankful for it. But when you think about it, and I want to be remembered by it because I won't have a statue out there, but I've got it on my desk. I apologize I didn't bring it up. I was the last one in this legislature to have a flip phone. That will be my distinction. Well, I've been a councilman, a mayor, a school board member, a tax commissioner, now with you, and I've enjoyed it all. I thank each of you for the courtesy shown, our staff, our doorkeepers, our troopers, and my fellow legislators. There it is right here. If you're down my way in District 138, Americas, and you need me, just stop by the fire hall. They can find me, and I'll be there to help you. You or your family or anybody else. Douglas MacArthur said in his retirement, old soldiers never die. They just fade away. Well, I think that might speak for us too as politicians. So with that, Mr. Speaker, I fade away, I yield the well, and thank you all.
Chair recognizes Representative Gardner to introduce the Doctor of the Day.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Those of us with joints that are a little worn and tired, like the Speaker and me, are going to want to get to know Dr. Theodis Buggs. Dr. Buggs is a board-certified orthopedic surgeon with Southeast Permanente Medical Group and Kaiser Permanente. A graduate of Clark Atlanta, received his medical degree from the University of Alabama and completed his fellowship at the University of Alabama at Birmingham. He has more than 20 years of practice in Atlanta and Birmingham and is a specialist in orthopedic trauma, sports medicine, and total joint replacement. If you're going to have a hip replaced, you want to have Dr. Buggs. His specialty is an innovative anterior approach which allows for faster recovery. In fact, he tells me his patients go home the very same day. So I think you will enjoy Dr. Buggs. He served on the board of directors for the YMCA and the Empower Ministries, a faith-based organization that provides health care for the indigent. I introduce to you Dr. Buggs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you this morning. I'd like to thank you for this great opportunity to serve you as doctor today. I am, as she said, an orthopedic surgeon that is with Kaiser Permanente, one of the largest physician-owned integrated medical services in Georgia. And we have a great enrollment of 300,000 and growing. I'd also like to thank each of you for your tremendous hard work and service to the citizens of Georgia. Y'all deal with challenging issues, especially the medical issues that impact us all. Not only us, but our sons and daughters and their sons and daughters. And I know that's challenging because it's even challenging for physicians. So thank you again for the opportunity. Thank you for your service. And come see me with questions and broken bones and soreness. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Representative Peak for a morning order. House will be in order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, I've been counting down the days, really looking forward to being finished. But today is hit a little harder than I thought it would. 12 years ago when I was elected, I had no idea what I was getting into. I'd never held public office, had no idea even how to pass a bill. But today, I stand before you with a heart of gratitude for the incredible experiences, the lessons learned, the friendships developed. So this morning, mostly, I just want to say thanks. Thanks to those legislators who were here when I got here. You are the giants of this chamber. And I'm so grateful for your great advice, your wise counsel, your gentle, and in some cases, not so gentle, correction. I've followed your examples and learned how to be a better legislator by watching you work. And many of you have become not only mentors, but darn good friends along the way, on both sides of the aisle. Many of you are still here that preceded me, that impacted me greatly. And the danger is in naming names, you always forget somebody, but Earl, Terry, John, Tom McCall, I don't know if he's over there, Jan, Richard, Butch and Ron, Brooks, AP Senior, and even Sharon Cooper. I was watching you and observing you and listening to you. And many Dems as well, Karen Drenner. The friendship you started with me that very first year we were on the CON committee together. And when I was a nobody, and you probably didn't even think anything about it, but your friendship that first year meant a lot to me. MMO, smartest person I've ever met. Al Williams, I just wish I could speak like you could just for a day, just to have those skills. I ain't sharing my money with you, though. And Calvin Smyrie, he's not here. I wish he could hear this. But he is indeed a legend. But he doesn't act like it. And that's what makes him so special. And many have left, but to one I owe a tremendous debt of gratitude, former Majority Leader Larry O'Neill, a mentor and a very dear friend. To you veterans, you never know how much simple gestures of kindness mean to someone. So to you veterans, thank you. You have indeed made an impact on me. To those who came in with me in the class of 2006, thanks for sharing this unique experience with me. We came in expecting to be the future leaders of the House. And we produced a congressman, Doug Collins, a DNR commissioner, Mark Williams, and a governor's candidate, Stacey Abrams. And we still have the velvet hammer from Rome, Miss Katie Dempsey. And along the way, we developed strong friendships that I have no doubt will last a lifetime. And to those that came after me, you youngsters, thanks for your energy and enthusiasm that renewed and challenged me, kept me on my toes, and reminded me of why I was here. The future leadership of the House will be in very good hands. To Phil Tucker and the doorkeeping crew, Phil, I'm glad to be going out with a legend. Thanks for your energetic, and all the crew, thanks for your energetic good mornings, your warm smiles, your friendly spirits that made this house so very special. To Speaker Ralston, we may have been on opposite sides a couple of times during my time here, but you and your team have always treated me fairly and with respect when many others in your same chair would not have done the same. And for that, I will be forever grateful. You have been a tremendous asset to our state, and you will be remembered for generations to come for a legacy of wisdom, calmness, and a steady hand when this chamber desperately needed. I'm proud to forever call you my speaker. To my wife, Betsy, who actually is here today up in the gallery up there. So y'all give her a warm welcome, man. Wave. Stand up. She's here with my daughter-in-law and my grandson, Henry. To Betsy and my kids, Christy, Joby, and Corey, and my extended family, thanks for sticking with me. loving me and supporting me during the ups and downs of a very public political life. My wife had the best line when we first started chatting about me running. She said, "I'm going to be behind you, but I'm going to be behind you." And she has. Through thick and thin, the rock of our family. And today's her birthday, too, by the way. She looks 29, I promise you. And finally, a huge shout out to my medical cannabis families, many of them who are here today as well, especially a little girl named Haley, who's here today as well. Thank you to each of you for giving me a glimpse into your lives and showing me what real courage is. You face challenges every day that most of us cannot even imagine. These citizen advocates are true heroes, and it has been an honor to fight beside you. These last 12 years have been filled with ups and downs, both wins and losses, unbelievable successes, and heartbreaking failures. But I can truly say that I'm grateful for all the experiences. They've made me a better person. They've made me a better man. And it has been an incredible honor and privilege to be part of this hallowed institution, to be a member of this esteemed body. I am forever changed for the better by my time spent here. So, with a grateful heart and no regrets, I yield the will.
We are now going on to the calendar. We're going on to the calendar. The clerk will read the caption to House Resolution 1107.
House Resolution 1107 by Representative Spencer of the 180th and others, urging the Department of Economic Development Center for Aerospace Innovations and its Aerospace Defense and Advanced Manufacturing team, along with the Department of Transportation and other relevant state agencies, to collectively work to construct, enhance, focus, and recruit the emerging commercial space industry in Georgia. This resolution having been referred to the Committee on Economic Development and Tourism. That committee recommends that this resolution be adopted.
Chair recognizes Representative Spencer to present the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, members of the House. I bring before you House Resolution 1107. This resolution is essentially urging the Department of Economic Development, their ATOM team, which stands for Aerospace Defense Advanced Manufacturing, and along with the Department of Transportation, to focus on recruiting, enhancing, and focusing their efforts in bringing the commercial space industry to Georgia. The commercial space industry is about $330 billion worth of economic activity globally, and the state of Georgia we need to get a piece of that pie. Our brain trust is leaving the state of Georgia. We have the #2 aerospace engineering program in the world at Georgia Tech, and they are leaving this state and giving our assets to someone else. We need to keep that here in Georgia, and what we want to do is urge the Department of Economic Development to focus on this sector of the economy. Georgia has a very proud tradition for aviation with the $50 billion economic impact. And so what I'm asking the department to do is to take those efforts that they've done a very good job of in bringing aviation here to Georgia to focus on the space in aerospace. And I will stand for any questions, Mr. Speaker.
You have no questions.
Thank you very much for your favorable consideration. I yield
Is
the
there
way.
any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the adoption of the resolution? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this resolution now be adopted? Oh, I'm sorry, we had a speaker. Got ahead of myself, Representative. Chair recognizes Representative Jeff Jones to speak to the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, fellow members of the House. And Mr. Speaker, you may run this show any way you so choose, but thank you for the opportunity. I'm standing today in full and strong support of H.R. 1107. This body has passed a number of measures in the past in support of Georgia's burgeoning space industry and Spaceport Camden. H.R. 1107 is just one more measure in our state's journey to bring space flight to Georgia, with up to 12 launches per year at Spaceport Camden. A preliminary impact study has been released, and it further affirms that Spaceport Camden is indeed a viable and worthwhile project. I have a report here from the Georgia Realtors, and if there's anybody that would be concerned about a loss of property value or other issues that the spaceport might impact, in a survey of Camden County residents, it was nearly 2-to-1 in favor of the spaceport. In the 13-county region of the Southeast, the support was about 50%. So clearly, the Georgia Realtors recognize the value of this measure and the spaceport and are not concerned as it might affect property values. So I urge you to support H.R. 1107 and for good-paying aerospace jobs in Georgia and at Spaceports Camden. Please vote yes on H.R. 1107. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield the well.
Chair recognizes Chairman David Knight to speak to the resolution. Just a minute, Mr. Chairman. We will take as little time or as much time as it is the will of the body. But once you're in the chamber, then we're going to be respectful and give attention to the members in the well. If you have business, and I know many of you do, then we have plenty of places to take your discussions, and you can raise the decibel level as high as you want. Chair recognizes Chairman Knight to speak to the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Many of you last year remember me coming up this well urging caution regarding the spaceport. I did it in a way in which not trying to stifle growth and economic development in this state. Lord knows I've been up here 14 years and I've been either the author or a part of co-sponsoring and passing legislation that has made this state the #1 state to do business in. And everybody knows that where I stand on that. But what I also understand is I've been up here long enough to know that we've got other responsibilities and that this is our state And we owe a duty to the people who we serve to make sure of what we do, that we know the repercussions of it. Last year, I introduced House Resolution 643. It's towards the end of the session. It was simply just an urging resolution. And let me tell you what it did. The key paragraph in it is, whereas the impacts of commercial spaceport may have on Georgia's ports, its commercial fishing, its shrimping industries, and its recreation tourism industries, and private property rights. I just simply an urging resolution. And the author of this resolution defeated me in the committee, and all I heard was, wait, wait, wait. The environmental impact study is going to come. It'll be out in months. Well, here we are, a year later. It just came out, okay? And not only did it not take care of my concerns, it even raised more concerns. Second of all, I want y'all to know there was a test flight of a rocket that was launched in September. No mention of that during the hearings. When you sit there and you read the EIS, the environmental impact study from the FAA, my concern protecting Georgia waters, protecting the assets, the fishing and the hunting down there on that coast, I simply asked, what is the impact? It was sort of funny. Read in that section where they talked about what was the impact going to be on the fishery down there. You know what they said? And it's in the EIS study. They said there would be no impact because it wouldn't impact the rainbow trout and the brown trout. This is in the EIS study that came out of the FAA. Again, let me repeat that. Brown trout and rainbow trout. Mr. Speaker, can you tell me what part of the state of Georgia rainbow trout and brown trout exist in?
I sure can. The trout capital of Georgia is Fannin County.
It was a joke. It was a joke. It was an absolute joke. And let me tell you something. That coast belongs to everyone in here and everyone across the state of Georgia. And all I asked was for a reasonable caution going into it. And your desk has been littered this year with all this propaganda. Let me tell you what the big concern is. And for you members who were here back when we first came in, everybody remember the Kelo, the Supreme Court case? Kelo, what was that about? It was about personal property. It was about the taking of personal property. This General Assembly had to deal with it. Let me read from you an email that I have in front of me, and I want to quote it. It's from the FAA. Listen up. There was a question that was posed recently to the FAA, and it has to do with the articles on your desk about authorized personnel. This is a response from the FAA, and I quote, "The term authorized persons as used in the draft environmental impact study is a term that Camden County has used to describe individuals who could remain in certain areas on Cumberland Island and Little Cumberland Island during the operations at the proposed launch site. It is not, I repeat, it is not a term used anywhere in FAA regulations. In accordance with 14 CFR 417-.107, a launch operator may initiate a flight only if the risk to any individual member of the public does not exceed a casualty expectation of 1 in 1 million per launch for each hazard. Therefore, a launch operator could not conduct a licensed launch from Camden County if the risk to any member of the public, including those who remain on Cumberland Island and Little Cumberland Island, did not meet this requirement. A launch operator who intends to conduct launches from Camden County may need to identify the closure areas to meet this requirement. Well, let me tell you what else it says in the EI study. They can't tell you what the closure requirements are because they can't tell you. It depends on the individual parts and the individual components of each data launch or each launch. A couple other things that I understand is I understand are happening. There's a hazard review. Nowhere it's mentioned in the EIS, but nowhere is that study available. Nowhere. In fact, I understand there's been some open records requests for it. They refuse to give it. There's also a safety or security study that nobody has access to. Again, I urge caution in this last year. You know something? When you keep getting crap like this on your desk, it sort of reminds me, and I apologize to anybody going to used car salesman, but it sort of reminds me of when you go up to a used car salesman and he just tries to keep sending you and selling you stuff and keep getting you to buy it and buy it and buy it quickly. Guys, there's real issues here. And again, all I did was urge last year that we use caution. This isn't up to the federal government. That coast belongs to everybody in the state of Georgia. And it's ours. And as the General Assembly, we've got a responsibility. As much as this General Assembly supports economic growth and development in this state, we also have a responsibility to protect our citizens and protect the natural resources that belongs to everyone in this state. Mr. Speaker, I'll be happy to answer a question or two.
Do you yield?
Yes, sir.
Chair recognizes Representative Spencer to your right for a question. Okay, he does not have a question. Chair recognizes Chairman Nimmer to your left for a question.
Does the gentleman yield?
Yes, sir.
Chairman Knight, I want to, in front of this House and to you, publicly apologize for working against your resolution last year, urging us to proceed with great caution on this project down in southeast Georgia. As a representative and a defender of the coast from the southeastern part of this state and somebody that fights for economic development, I believe this is vitally important that we move forward, but move forward with great caution. If I could rewind, as many of us have had these moments, to last year in that committee, I'd have fought for your resolution, and for that I apologize. But I want to ask a question if the gentleman will yield.
Yes, sir.
We both agree that the southeast and rural parts of our state need development. Is that not true?
Absolutely.
But I think you and I both are of the same sentiment that when the report came out that we agreed last year in committee that we would wait on before any rockets were sent off the dirt in southeast Georgia. When that report came out and a rocket had already been launched, we were deeply concerned. And if I remember, sir, you and I had conversations about this while we were out of this General Assembly. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. Representative, you were correct. You know, when we were in that committee and we were debating this resolution last year, it was wait for the environmental impact study. It's going to take care of all the concerns. But there was no mention of a rocket launch, even a test rocket launch. And as you know, you and I spoke after we learned that there had been a test rocket launch, and upon reviewing, going back and wondering where this came from, how it got here, there was an article that was in the, I think it was Atlanta Business Chronicle. I think you and I spoke of it. It was, I think, published 2 days before this General Assembly left for Sine Die last year that actually described that there was a rocket launch coming up. And I just wonder why that was not disclosed to this body. But
Mr. Speaker, if I may, would the gentleman further yield?
Yes, sir.
Chairman Knight, I want to tell you, I do understand, I think you do, and everybody in this body understands the nature of a resolution. I understand we're asking to urge something to be looked at and move forward. And I know a lot of times we'll kind of turn our head at those. But on this one today, given the nature of the resolution you presented to this committee last year upstairs in room 403, and the emails and the phone calls I got after we adjourned sine die and a rocket was sent into space off the Georgia coast, and I apologize to those constituents and people around the state that if I had it to do over with again, I'd vote no on that, vote for that resolution that you brought forward. Lends me today to vote against this resolution until we can get a sound environmental impact study and then proceed the way we need to with extreme caution and care and concern for our citizens and the natural resources down on the coast. Is that not true?
That is very true. And Representative Member, you've been a good friend and you've been a good steward and a good representative to everybody in this state and folks on your coast. I appreciate you. With that, Mr. Speaker, I yield the well.
You did have one more question if you care to take it.
I have one more.
Chair recognizes Representative Al Williams to your left for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the gentleman yield?
Yes, sir.
Is it not true that as a proud citizen of the coast and as my esteemed chairman of Game, Fish, and Parks, you've put me in a precarious position because is it not true that the sponsor of this bill has promised me that he would leave on the first launch?
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, Mr. Speaker, I yield the well.
Gentleman has yielded the well. Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. We have a request for the chairman's time. The chair recognizes the chair of the Economic Development and Tourism Committee, Chairman Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'll yield back about 5 minutes of my time to the author of the bill. Let me talk to you just a minute from one of us that lives on the coast. As a kid, I can remember back whenever, the Georgia ports was not the Georgia ports. And some of these very same arguments, whenever this body decided to come in and fund the expansion of the Georgia ports, there was nothing there. We weren't even a blip on the map. How did this body handle it? We mitigated as we moved along slowly. Today, there's 350,000 jobs in your district, ladies and gentlemen. In your district. Each and every single district in this body is sitting here today with jobs in their district from the Georgia ports. If we had taken the same approach as you've heard today, let's slam the door on prosperity. Imagine where the ports would be. Let's talk about the submarine base. It's down in Camden County. Same problem that we're talking about today. Yeah, there's issues. Whether it's with the ports, with the sturgeon, whether it's with the submarines coming in, with wildlife, there's problems. We mitigate, we work through it. Imagine today talking about broadband and the security issues with these long-term placements of these submarines down in South Georgia. If we had a security satellite that goes up to take care of these issues that came from Georgia. Imagine every single piece of rural Georgia, if the answer happened to be from satellite broadband, to have the opportunity for that to be jobs in Georgia. How in the world do we slam the door today? Mr. Speaker, as a resident of the coastal Georgia living on the water, I would ask you to consider voting for this resolution, and let's keep jobs coming to Georgia and keep this process moving. I'll yield the well.
Chair recognizes Representative Spencer for the balance of the chair's time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, I've heard propaganda. I've heard several things, and I apologize to my friend, Representative Williams. That rocket wasn't actually seated to be a man riding vehicle. So, but let's talk about that. Also, I want to talk about the resolution that was defeated last year in the Environmental Committee. And so the implication from Chairman Nine is that I lied to this body. I'm offended by that implication. I did not know that that launch was going to take place until July this year, and NASA and the FAA gave a special waiver for that particular launch because the licensure in the EIS that came out in March, and I will say this, Mr. Chairman, if you read that 441-page report, the word draft is stamped right on the front of it. D-R-A-F-T, draft. You have an opportunity, Mr. Chairman, and all those who have concerns, to put your public comments and send it to the FAA. I have given you literature after literature, letters after letters. There are emails that you can send those comments to. So if you're worried about the rainbow trout and the inaccuracy or the propaganda inside that report, please make a comment on your letterhead and address that with the FAA. That is why this is a draft process. This process will close in May, and you have the opportunity, Mr. Chairman, to do that. Ladies and gentlemen, this is about bringing jobs, high-paying jobs to Georgia, to Southeast Georgia, rural economic development, and the prospects of bringing internet access through low satellite orbit capability. So if you want to vote against that, please reconsider. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I will yield the where if there's no questions.
You have a question if you care to yield. You got a couple.
I'll yield.
Chair recognizes Representative Raffensperger to your right for a question.
Will the gentleman yield?
I do.
Sir, is it not true, several years ago in my company, I hired a young engineer with an aerospace degree, unfortunately not from Georgia Tech, but from Auburn. But he was a Columbus native and ended up having to leave the state of Georgia to pursue his love, which was aerospace engineering, and moving to Florida.
That's true. The gentleman knows of what he speaks.
Sir, is it not true then if we had an actual aerospace program in Georgia, that Georgians would have a place to call home, and it would be Georgia?
That is true. The gentleman knows of what he speaks.
Thank you for your resolution.
Thank you.
You have another question or two if you care to yield.
I'll take one more, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Bentley must see this as an opportunity to pick up some dead bodies. Chair recognizes Representative Bentley to your left for a question.
Does the gentleman yield?
I do.
Does this resolution have anything to do with the funeral home business?
Well, we can take any casket you want, way up in the sky, ma'am. We can take any casket you want.
Does the gentleman further yield?
I do.
You mentioned in your comments that this resolution will help create jobs. How would this help create jobs down in my district, rural Georgia? Dirt roads, we don't have any rockets down there. We got a lot of dirt roads and funeral homes. Can you help me understand how this is going to create jobs in that part of the state?
This resolution deals with the entire state of Georgia. It doesn't specifically deal with the project in Camden County. So what can happen is we can become a space state like Texas and Florida, where all these manufacturing capabilities can be spread throughout the state. In a particular area like rural Georgia, the Department of Transportation could look at potential runways for actually horizontal launches in the rural parts of the state where we have space, where we have acreage. So this is a possibility for rural economic development.
And you absolutely certain it's not going to impact the funeral industry, right?
I don't think so, ma'am. The FAA has a 99% record on over 300 launches since the early 1990s for the commercial space industry, and there has been no problems with the uninvolved public.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I will yield the will.
previous question was already ordered. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the adoption of the resolution? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this resolution now be adopted? All those in favor of the adoption of House Resolution 1107 will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machine. What purpose does Chairman Nimmer rise?
Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Mr. Speaker, is it not true that while I, again, understand this is a resolution, and I have some of the deepest respect for Chairman Ron Stevens, Representative Spencer made my point when he said we defeated a resolution last year in committee to proceed with caution. We left this body, a rocket was launched, and he did not know about it until July. I'm asking this body to vote against this resolution till we can get away from a draft environmental impact study and get an accurate one, and until we can find out exactly what the schedule of the rocket launches are. And then y'all, because I will not be back, and this is not my go-away speech, I hope, can come back next year and debate how to move forward. But for now, this resolution needs to go down.
I'm sure the gentleman feels sincerely of that which he speaks. Chair recognizes Chairman Knight. For what purpose does he rise?
Parliamentary
State your inquiry.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Speaker, isn't it true that if this draft environmental study is to get out there all the facts so that the public can have proper input into this, would it also be fair that the two items that have been requested under open records, which is a hazard study and also a security study of the launch site, also be open to public so that we can determine what are the closure areas? And until that point, wouldn't it also be prudent, again, that we just use caution going forward?
Chair recognizes, or what purpose does Representative Spencer rise?
Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Isn't it not true that the launch that was happened in August was a separate process from the EIS draft that we have currently that has been published, draft report? Isn't that not true?
I'm sure if the gentleman states that, he believes that to be true.
And is it
what purpose does Chairman Stevens rise?
Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Is it not true this is a resolution and it's going to be a long day?
The chair can answer that in the affirmative. All right, final recognition here. What purpose does Chairman Nimmer rise?
Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Mr. Speaker, is it not true that when I spoke in front of this House on crossover day, nobody in this chamber was afraid to go red with me that night? I'm asking you to do it one more time.
All members in favor of the resolution are voting green. Those opposed are voting red. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine on the adoption of House Resolution 1107. The ayes are 111, the nays are 59. This resolution, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore adopted. Clerk will read the caption to Senate Bill 376.
Senate Bill 376 by Senator Schaefer of the 48th, Kirk of the 13th, Alvarez of the 56th, Thompson of the 14th, Heath of the 31st, and others to be entitled an act to amend Article 34 of Chapter 1 of Title 10 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to identity theft. This bill has been referred to the Committee on Banks and Banking. That committee recommends that this bill do pass.
Chair recognizes Representative Turner to present the bill.
Y'all watch this. I bring before you HB 376, which is the same bill that we passed out of here, 168 to 1, having to do with removing fees for credit freezes and thaws. I'll yield for questions.
You have none.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There is an amendment. I'll allow Representative Harrell to explain that. Thank you.
There is an amendment offered to the bill. It is Amendment AM 340792. Clerk will read the caption to the amendment.
AM 340792 by Representative Harrell, 106th, offers the following amendment. The amendment is printed and on your desks. It amends 7 Bill 376 LC 215917 by adding after account on line 3 the following.
Is there any objection to adopting the amendment that is offered by Representative Harrell? Any objection? The chair hears none and the amendment is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members now voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines. On the passage of Senate Bill 376, the ayes are 168, the nays are 1. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Chair recognizes Chairman Sam Watson for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I make a motion to agree to the Senate substitute to HB 332.
Chairman Watson has moved that the House agree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 332 as amended by this House. The clerk will read the caption.
House Bill number 332 to be titled, an act to amend Title 12 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated relating to conservation and natural resources.
Chair recognizes Chairman Watson to explain his motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. All we're doing here is, as this bill came back from the Senate, Chairman Hill made some changes to it, and we need to address some technical concerns for the Department of Revenue and the State Treasurer's Office. So we're changing half to 80, and we're replacing a 25 to 40. We're not changing any of the amounts that we originally had in the first version of the bill that left and went over, and I would appreciate your support. I'll take
Is there any objection to the adoption of the House amendment? The chair hears none and the House amendment is adopted. On the gentleman's motion that the House agree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 332 as amended by the House, all those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machine. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines. On the gentleman's motion, the ayes are 166, the nays are 1. This House has agreed to the Senate substitute to House Bill 332 as amended by the House. Chair recognizes Chairman Watson for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Now we've got to make a motion to agree to the Senate substitute
as amended by the House on H.R. 238. This is the constitutional amendment portion of this legislation that allow the voters to decide to do this, and I would appreciate your support.
Chairman Watson has moved that the House agree to the Senate substitute to House Resolution 238 as amended by the House. The clerk will read the caption.
Resolution proposing an amendment to the Constitution so as to authorize the General Assembly to provide by general law for an annual allocation of 75% of the revenue derived from the state sales and use tax.
Chair recognizes Chairman Watson to explain his motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I said, this is the constitutional amendment portion of this legislation, and we're just replacing half to 80, same as we did in the enabling, to clarify some concerns that Revenue and the State Treasurer's Office had, and that's all we're doing in this bill. Appreciate your support.
Is there any objection? You had a question. Do you yield?
Yes, sir.
Chair recognizes Chairman Lynn Smith to your right for a question.
Thank you. And gentlemen, yield?
Yes, ma'am.
I hope our chamber pauses for a second here and realizes what a great achievement this body has done. After 10 years of extensive study of this issue, we are now confirming for our citizens a wonderful quality of life initiative, and I thank you and all the others for your effort. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
No. No, we're going to do the budget.
If there are no questions, I yield to Will.
Is there any objection to the adoption of the House amendment? The chair hears none, and the House amendment is adopted. On the gentleman's motion that the House agree to the Senate substitute to House Resolution 238 as amended by the House, all those in favor will vote aye, those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine on the adoption adoption of the resolution and the gentleman's motion. The ayes are 168, the nays are 1. This House has agreed to the Senate substitute House Resolution 238 as amended by the House. House will come to order. We got a lot of noise and a lot of movement. Chair recognizes the gentleman from the 116th District, Chairman England, for a motion.
Mr. Speaker, I move that this House adopt the Committee of Conference report on House Bill 684.
Chairman England has moved that the House adopt the Committee of Conference report on House Bill 684. The clerk will read the Conference Committee report.
The Committee on Conference on HB 684 represents that both the House of Representatives and the Senate recede from their positions in the attached Committee of Conference substitute to HB 684 be adopted.
The chair recognizes Chairman England to explain the Committee of Conference report for House Bill 684.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you, Mr. Speaker. First, want to start off by thanking my counterpart in the Senate, Senator Jack Hill, Chairman Jack Hill, for his dedication not only to our state but her citizens as well, and for his willingness to work as hard as he does and his Senate colleagues as hard as they do on this budget, just like each and every one of you do. I want to thank his staff as well as Senate Budget and Evaluation Office. We spend a lot of time together over the last few days, and he and his staff and myself and our staff, and I just want to tell him thank you for that, his dedication. I'm going to do a few other thank yous, but I'm going to walk us real quickly through some comments. We're not going to go through the tracking sheet, and then at the end I've got a few more special thank yous to make as well.
So I hope you've had some time to review the document that's before you today, which has been on your desk since about 9:30 on Tuesday morning. It's my sincere pleasure to tell you that the conference committee version of the FY19 budget is nearly unchanged since it left as a bill here in the House. And the changes that were made by our peers in the Senate were not far in terms of the policy implications or the goals of this chamber. So I'll simply highlight some of those changes. On Monday, Governor Deal and his staff increased the revenue estimate by almost $195 million to recognize the conformity with federal tax changes as well as the strong revenue performance we've seen so far this year. This brings our FY19 spending plan to $26.2 billion, a year-over-year increase of just 4.6%. Nearly all of that $194.7 million, or 86% of it, is applied to fully fund QBE. Thank y'all. And thank you to the governor. It's been something we've worked on for a mighty long time, and we're proud to be able to do it. And I'm glad to be able to stand here and tell you we have. This single $166.7 million item, when added to the other adjustments such as student growth, is a net increase for the Department of Education of $510 million, over $500 million. This is 55.3% of all new spending that we see today. The funding for the TRS system remains intact, $361.7 million, and the conferees also added an additional $1.6 million for the public school employees retirement system to increase the retirement benefit for those 57,000 employees, which include our school bus drivers and lunchroom and cafeteria workers, from $15 to $15.25 per year of service. There is $15 million for school bus purchases and another $16 million for school safety grants also included. The bond package overwhelmingly provides for school construction needs that include $304 million in K-12, $375 million for the university system, and $114 million in bonds for our technical colleges across the state. Public libraries, while not technically higher education except for budgeting purposes, have increased their per capita funding earnings as well for purchasing of materials, as well as bonds for facility improvements and technology grants of nearly $2 million. The higher education funding formulas are also fully funded for the university system and the technical college system, and the two teaching programs of this budget represents $2.47 billion of state dollars. In concert with fully funding every education funding formula, we have enhanced access to educational opportunities across the spectrum with $986 million in increased scholarships, the amounts and the number available, as well as appropriated $820.5 million in early care and learning programs for our quality-based daycare and pre-K programs. Through the process, we have moved education funding just about a full percentage point higher than when we started in January, from 53.7% to 54.04%. Education agencies total $14 billion of the $26 billion before you today. In human resources, that portion of the budget, we held our promise to do the $10 per day increase per diem for foster care families and relative caregivers, as well as a 2.6% increase to our child caring partners, which began as an initiative in this House last year. This effort was significant, and $22.4 million in new funding will go directly to foster care providers in recognition of the actual average cost of raising a child in the southeastern United States. With additions for out-of-home care and care coordinators as recommended by the Commission on Children's Mental Health, about $40 million is being directed toward young people in this state's care. The conferees have also provided an increase in support of $490,000, in addition to funds for child advocacy centers of $100,000 for sexual assault centers. The other recommendations of the Children's Mental Health Commission exceed $21 million in House Bill 684 and are directed toward crisis services, school-based mental health services, suicide preventions, including Chair Lady Dempsey's mobile app, available to every Georgia citizen 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, with professional responders. We also provide for training, telehealth, and opioid prevention and intervention. Opioids are not the only drug problem we have in this state, and two new items for your consideration in the bill are designed to address all substance abuse. $4 million for community service boards and local recovery programs, $6 million in crisis stabilization beds, and $2.3 million to fully staff every GBI drug task force in the state. There are additional scientists for GBI, as well as a new program to train and certify our local jail officers, who are responsible for over 25,000 incarcerated individuals. We are also bolstering local law enforcement with the addition of a crisis intervention training program and officers, and with a 75-person trooper school coming up, and the full continued funding for criminal justice reforms that are executed through targeted funding for accountability courts, the judicial system, and the model reentry facility opening here in Atlanta shortly. Public safety and the courts are appropriated 8.9% of all FY19 dollars. In health policy, the Senate agreed with many of the House initiatives, including funding to address maternal mortality. We agreed to their companion ads for maternal coaches during prenatal care and the increased payment rates for obstetricians treating those mothers in rural and underserved areas. Provider rate increases for pediatric care nurses serving the medically fragile, nursing homes, dentists, adult day providers, certain autism services, and therapists for Babies Can't Wait, and the residents and medical programs that provide a collective approach to enhanced healthcare service delivery. I would also like to remind you that both chambers also agree on funding of 99 new residency slots and a startup program for PCOM in Moultrie. And while providing for a healthy Georgia is a clear 21.5% of the state funds, there are also health initiatives that in every policy area of this appropriations bill, in corrections, in Department of Education, in DJJ, and within the Board of Regents as well. Another example is the House Rural Development Council's recommendations for a health center of innovation, which is funded in the Office of Rural Health, but will be a collaborative effort with a university partner to provide training, model business practices, data analytics, and other supports for small hospitals, clinics, and healthcare centers. Additional RDC recommendations remain fully funded. Those include an attorney at DCA to help small communities as they apply for historic preservation grants for their downtown areas. $1.7 million for the Center for Rural Prosperity and Innovation, a Southwestern hub for independent living supports, financial assistance for insurance premium assistance for doctors that are the sole practitioners in counties in areas of the state, a comprehensive interagency format for the identification and marketing and sale of Georgia products on the domestic and international fronts, statewide crisis intervention and emergency medical technician trainers, and rail line repair. That's just a few of the things. And in concert with the work of Chairman Jay Powell on Senate Bill 402, we are also added $1.4 million for personnel and some of the operating expenses related to our rural broadband program. Broadband, as you know, is an economic necessity, but so are our roads and bridges, which through a combination of motor fuel funds at $1.9 billion and $100 million in bonds for bridges has reached $2 billion in funding. This bond package still has $35 million for the Port Harbor deepening, but a new item that was added also provides $100 million to move the state forward on the development of transit. Other adjustments provide another adjustment, I'll get it out here in a second. Another adjustment to provide heightened economic activity includes an increase from the House position of $500,000 to retain state career centers Through an innovative partnership with our technical colleges and other state and local partners that help connect to citizens and businesses and make for employment options. There's a lot going on in this budget, which may be, and actually is, probably the one that I'm the most proud of the 8 that I've had a hand in helping draft. It's epic in its reach. Despite the conservative growth allowed by the governor's revenue estimate, we have done an awful lot of stuff. To that end, a word of thanks to our governor. Governor Deal and his team at OPB, Teresa McCartney and all of her shop, and Chief of Staff Chris Riley. It has been indeed a pleasure for 8 years for me to be in my seat and to have worked with Governor Deal and his team as we have tried to move this state forward and have done so successfully. We've done that while putting almost $2.5 billion back in our rainy day fund, which at the point when he took office had 2 days operating there. We've maintained a AAA bond rating through the recession and so many other things. But a special heartfelt thanks to he and his staff. And I want to quote from his first State of the State address here when we were still in the tough times. And the quote begins, "I am reducing the revenue estimate on which the budget is based. The primary reason for this reduction is that revenues from fees are lower than projected. Even though there are some signs of economic recovery, I do not believe we should spend additional revenue if actual collections exceed the estimate. One of the driving principles behind these conservative budgets is a commitment to replenish the revenue shortfall reserve, sometimes referred to as our rainy day fund. I commend you for raising the authorized limits of the fund last year. It will help protect our future budgets." End quote. 8 years of consistent live within your means budget instructions and practices have replenished that RSR to that number I mentioned a minute ago. And while he began by this administration by lowering the revenue estimate, it's particularly deserved that his final budget includes the opportunity to responsibly raise and increase the revenue estimate. I would also like to thank our subcommittee chairs for their relentless hours of combing through budgets and spreadsheets, listening to hours of testimony, meeting with people year-round, evaluating needs that come from every direction, every minute of the day. Your dedication and leadership is unsurpassed, and I thank you, each and every one. To our House Budget and Research Office staff, I can't thank y'all enough either. Y'all are my rock here. Y'all are my backbone, and there's no way that I nor this House could do what we do without y'all. Thank y'all. And finally, a word of thanks to our Speaker, who shows an incredible respect for this process by allowing all of the members of this House to have opportunity to weigh in on spending and to bring ideas to the table. Your leadership ensures that this House will maintain a conservative and balanced approach to continue to protect our future budgets. And Mr. Speaker, that concludes my remarks. I am happy to answer any questions there may be, or otherwise ask for your favorable consideration.
You have 2 or 3 questions if you care to yield.
I'm glad to.
Chair recognizes Chairman Willard to your right for a question.
Thank you. The gentleman yield?
Yes, sir.
I am absolutely amazed at the amount of money we're putting back into education. Do you have an idea how many millions that we are now, as new money, adding to the education programs of this
About
state?
$510 million in new money this year.
And may I follow up with another point?
Yes, sir.
I know the years I've been here, that's been one of the hardest things that we've had to do is trying to find money for education. And I'd say some of the nastiest emails I've received over the years have been from the people in education, educrats. Have you received any thanks from this group? Since I'm leaving office, I can ask this question, I think.
Yes, sir, I have. Some very, very, very nice emails.
That's great. Thank you for
Thank
all
you.
your work.
Yes, sir.
Do you further yield?
Yes, sir.
Chair recognizes Chairman Dollar to your left for a question.
Gentlemen, yield?
Yes, sir.
I know this is something we've had conversations about over the years with the QBE funding, and I just want to thank you for your years of working on this. I want to thank this House's work, and again, the governor and his office for making this happen. I really, deep heart, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Do you yield for one further question?
Yes, sir.
Chair recognizes Representative Wilkerson to your left for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the gentleman yield?
Yes, sir.
I want to thank you for increasing the QBE funding. I believe when the budget first passed, one of the primary reasons I voted against it at that time was because of the tax bill, and I was worried about the amount of money going out and coming in, and I knew we had about $265 million extra, and I just want to say thank you for using that to fund the QBE. And looking forward, based on the revenue projections we have in the next few years, will we continue to make that effort to try to fund QBE even after the taxes go down? I guess that's my question, is we'll still make that effort. I just want to make sure.
That is certainly my plan, and I know of others that have the same idea.
Thank you so much.
Yes, sir.
You have no further questions.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I will yield the well. I'm going to go back to my seat and vote green on this conference committee report, and I hope everyone else in this House joins me in doing the same. Thank you.
On the adoption of the conference committee report on House Bill 684, all those in favor of the adoption of the conference committee report will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine. On the adoption of the conference committee report on House Bill 684, the FY19 state budget, the ayes are 175. The nays are 1. And the conference committee report has been adopted. Chair recognizes Representative Terry Rogers for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think mine will be a little bit shorter than that. I move that the House agree to the Senate substitute to HB 792 as amended by the House.
Representative Rogers moves that the House agree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 792 as amended by the House. The clerk will read the caption.
House Bill 792 to be titled an act to amend Chapter 8 of Title 12 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated relating to waste management so as to extend the sunset date for certain solid waste surcharges and hazardous waste fees.
The chair recognizes Representative Rogers to explain his motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Earlier this session, the House voted 155-8 to sunset the Hazardous Waste Trust Fund for 1 year to July 1st, 2019. What this agreement does is with the Senate, they have agreed to that part, but they have also amended. And at this point, Mr. Speaker, I am going to yield the balance of my time to Chairman Meadows to explain the amendment.
Gentleman has that right, and the chair recognizes Chairman Meadows.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, if you look on your desk, you'll see an AM 440070. Like Mr. Rogers said, 792 is the Solid Waste Trust Fund that runs out.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. We gotta...
That runs out June the 30th. It is imperative we do that, but while it was over in the Senate, a little bill got added to it, and all of a sudden we're having to deal with solid waste. We have worked for the last 3 weeks trying to come up with some compromise language, and I at this time would like to say thank you to one, Lynn Smith and Kevin Tanner, because they are instrumental in getting what we've got on this amendment. I won't say it's perfect, but it's about as close as we can get. And what that does, it changes the wording of the original amendment to the amendment that you see, and that is, it's going to affect several counties across this state, but it concerns the amount that you can be charged for waste disposal in those communities. The big part of that thing is that is Part B, and it imposes a surcharge of $2 a ton effective 2025 for coal ash. In Part C, the second major thing is how much the host local government, in other words, your local government that has one of these landfills, is required to charge for a surcharge for the amount of garbage put there. That's basically what it does. Most of you are not affected, but with this amendment, we think we can get the governor's solid waste trust fund bill through the House and Senate. And I will take questions if there are any. Otherwise, I will yield the well.
You have a question if you care to yield.
Yes, sir.
Chair recognizes Chairman Tanner to your right for a question.
Does a fine gentleman yield?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, isn't it true that Chairman Epps and Chairman Smith and Chairman Welch and all of us who are affected by landfills in this state and represent an area with landfills who hear from our constituents want to thank you, want to thank Senator Jones and others who have worked on this tirelessly, and we would encourage that everyone vote and support this.
The gentleman is correct, and I apologize for leaving out other people, but I took my two committee chairmen to recognize. You have to say thank you to the entire committee, both transportation and natural resources.
Chair recognizes Chairman Werkheiser to your left for a question.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Chairman. Is it not true that I do represent one of the counties that affects the amendment, and I appreciate you allowing the amendment, and it will be a big boost to some of the counties in southeast Georgia. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you further yield?
Yes, sir.
Chair recognizes Chairman Lynn Smith to your right for a question.
Gentleman yield?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for your compromise in the rules process as chairman of the rules. When this bill left my committee, it was further worked on in the rules process, and this is a compromise that has been reached, and I think you spent several hours and days on trying to work on this. But to my committee, I want to thank you as well for your hard work in achieving the compromise we presented. And to those who follow this process, a lot of times it's not easy. This is one of the most difficult code sections we have to deal with. And if the gentleman will yield, I want to thank you for your efforts. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am.
Do you further yield?
Yes, sir.
Chair recognizes Representative Bentley to your left for a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the gentleman yield?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Chairman, is it not true that I, too, represent one of those landfills in my district, and we are very appreciative to your work on this legislation and this amendment?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair recognizes Chairman Welch to your left for a question.
Does the gentleman
Yes, sir.
yield? Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to express my gratitude to you and to those members of the Natural Resources Committee and Subcommittee on their hard work and dedication to working through these issues. They're complex. They affect many communities. They affect citizens across the state of Georgia. And on behalf of those in Butts County, we really appreciate the hard work of this House. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you further yield?
Yes, sir.
Chair recognizes Representative Gonzalez to your left for a question.
Does the gentleman yield?
Yes, ma'am.
This is just a point of clarification as I look at line 17, and it's line 15 to 17, and then line 20 to 23. Are these two different surcharges?
No. Yes, ma'am. The second part is for basically coal ash. That's why it's been put off to 2025. The 15 through 17 is just for those with a municipal solid waste that is owned by a private enterprise.
Thank you so much.
You have no further questions.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to, well, I'm not going to yield the well. I'm going to apologize for putting that urgent resolution on this morning. I yield the well.
I was going to talk to you about that at lunch. On the gentleman's motion that the House agree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 792 as amended by this House, all those in favor will vote aye, those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine on the gentleman's motion. The ayes are 155, the nays are 14. And the gentleman's motion has been approved, and the House has agreed to the Senate substitute to House Bill 792 as amended by this House. Chair recognizes Chairman Cooper for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the House insist in its position on Senate Bill 202.
Chairman Cooper has moved that the House insist on its position in disagreeing on House Bill 202. The clerk will read the caption.
Senate Bill 202 to be titled an act to amend Article 7 of Chapter 4, Title 49 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to medical assistance generally so as to provide for an increase in the personal needs allowance to be deducted from a nursing home resident's income.
On the lady's motion that the House insist on its position in disagreeing with the Senate on House Bill 202, is there objection? Is there objection? The chair hears none, and the House has insisted. Chair recognizes Representative Anulowicz for an announcement.
Thank you. I would just like to remind the members of the Terry Caucus, that is Representative Terry England, we have Terry Rogers, Terry Chastain, myself, and the most powerful member of the caucus, which is doorkeeper Terry Ellington. We will meet in the anteroom immediately following recess for a photo. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Representative Cannon for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. April 4th marks 50 years since the assassination of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. April 9th marks 50 years since the burial of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. here in Atlanta. June marks 50 years since the founding of the King Center here in Atlanta. And I have a commending resolution of these important milestones for any justice seekers who would like to sign the resolution. Thank you.
That completes the pre-lunch announcements. This House is going to be in recess for lunch. I'm sorry, we have one more announcement. Chair recognizes Representative Mabel Thomas for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just want to mention to members of this body that the blue bags that you have at your desk, it's a part of today is the annual Environmental Legislative Day under the Golden Dome, and one of the sponsors is Gen Care Senior Medical Center, and also some of you may know that the ice cream that is downstairs is a part of this Environmental Legislative Day. So thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
What purpose does Representative Pizzo rise?
Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Is it not true that my smoking hot wife is in the chamber with us today? And I would just like to recognize her for putting up with me and being an awesome mom and wife. So y'all give her a round of applause and shake her hand.
And offer up prayers for her. What purpose does Chairman Werkheiser rise?
Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Is it not true that now Pizzo has put the pressure on, so I'd like to introduce my smoking hot wife, Kathy.
Okay, anybody else got a smoking hot spouse in here? This House will be in recess for lunch until 2 p.m.